The night Saro was born, the sky wept as if mourning the death of his mother. Villagers whispered that the storm was a sign, a curse, carried into the world by the child who had claimed his mother's life. The midwife, trembling with grief, placed the infant in his father's arms, warning him, "This boy is touched by the unseen. His eyes will pierce the veil of what is and what will be." Saro grew up alone, raised by his father, a stoic woodsman, who could never look at his son without the shadow of his wife's absence clouding his gaze. By the time Saro could speak, his strange nature was undeniable. His first words were not words at all but visions. He foretold a storm that would shatter the village granary, and when the winds came, as he described, the village began to fear him. As he grew, his vision became more vivid, more unbearable. He could see deaths before they occurred, heartbreaks before they were felt, and betrayals before they were unfolded. His warnings were always met with suspicion, even hatred, for no one wanted to believe the horrors he foresaw. From the moment Saro first spoke words of the unseen, the village regarded him with fear and resentment. He was no ordinary child, and his gift, if it could be called that, was a curse in the eyes of those around him. At 3 years old, he pointed at a neighbor and said, "Your greed will bring ruin to your family." Weeks later, the man's plot to steal from his brother ended in disgrace. At 6, Saro exposed a secret affair that caused 2 families to nearly tear themselves apart. The villagers soon realized that Saro did not simply see the future. He laid bare the darkest truths they wished to keep hidden. The whispers began. Why was he born? He should have died with his mother. He is an abomination. The good news Saro brought, a bountiful harvest, the birth of a healthy child, or the return of a lost loved one, was celebrated briefly, but quickly forgotten. The villagers clung instead to his warnings, resenting him for forcing them to confront what they preferred to ignore. The evildoers hated him most. Saro did not shy away from naming thieves, liars, and adulterers. He reprimanded them with words as sharp as knives, often speaking of their thoughts before they acted. "You plan to betray your brother, she? The child you are carrying belongs to another man, you." The guilty could not escape his gaze, and they despised him for it. Some sought out native mystic doctors from neighboring village, desperate to silence him. Potions and charms were crafted and curses cast, yet none could harm him. The mystic whispered that his power was too great, protected by forces beyond their reach. Others, envious of his gift, tried to extract it for themselves. One night, a man crept into Saro's home, attempting to cut a lock of his hair for a ritual. Saro woke, his voice calm yet chilling. "If you take what is not yours, you will lose all that you hold dear." Terrified, the man fled, and his fortunes soon unraveled. 2 powerful native mystic doctors, Njaka and Okwi, plotted in secret to destroy Saro. They had long feared his gift, for his ability to reveal the truth exposed their deceptions and falsehoods. Clients began abandoning them, whispering that Saro, even as a child, could see what the mystic hid behind their incantations. "He is a threat to our craft," Njaka hissed. "If we cannot heal him, we must break him." Together, they cast a series of curses, sending waves of illness to Saro's father. The man, once strong and proud, grew frail, coughing blood as his body wasted away. Saro, just a boy, could see the shadowy hands of the curses gripping his father's chest, but he lacked the powers to stop them. Saro tried to tend to his father, but there was little he could do. The family, already isolated by the villagers' hatred, was shunned even further. People whispered that the father's illness was divine punishment for birthing a cursed child. The family fell into dire poverty. Saro often wandered into the forest, searching for herbs to ease his father's pains. At night, he dreamed of his mother, a voice calling to him from beyond the veil. "Hold on, my son. Even in the darkest night, there is a dawn." But the weight of their struggle was too much for the family to bear. Saro's relatives, desperate to save their own reputation and lighten the burden, forced him to marry a woman. The woman, Neka, was a vision of beauty, but her heart was darkened by the scheme of Njaka and Okmi. The mystics had groomed her from childhood, filling her with hatred for Saro. She was taught to feign affection while plotting his downfall. "He is a demon in human skin," Njaka told her. "He will bring about his destruction, and he will reward you beyond your wildest dream." Neka was sent to Saro under the guise of being a loyal and loving bride. The village celebrated their union, eager to see the troublesome boy burdened with responsibilities. At first, Neka played the role of a devoted wife, tending to Saro's ailing father and sharing in his trouble. But behind closed doors, she began her work of destruction. She whispered doubt into Saro's mind, questioning the worth of his gift. Why save those who hate you? Why bear the burden of their secrets? She sabotaged his effort to heal his father, replacing his carefully gathered herbs with useless weeds. When Saro had visions of danger looming over the village, Neka dismissed them as delusions, convincing him to stay silent. The villagers, seeing Saro falter, began to mock him openly. "The seer is blind. His gift has failed him." The villagers, unable to forget the truth he had revealed, had grown to resent him more each passing day. Even the few who had once looked upon him with pity now regarded him with scorn. Neka's betrayal had been the final blow. The woman his father married, the one who had feigned love, had not only turned against him, but had nearly succeeded in destroying him. Yet, her hatred, along with the constant rejection and cruelty of the villagers, had turned something fragile inside him. One evening, after a long day of being ridiculed and humiliated, Saro stood at the edge of the village, gazing out at the distant horizon. The sky stretched wide, endless and free. "This is not my place," he whispered to himself. "I'll not be shackled by their fear." The next morning, Saro packed his few belongings, said a quiet goodbye to the only place he had ever known, and left without a word. He had no plan, no destination, only a deep aching need to escape the suffocating hatred of the village. He traveled far from the hills and forests he had grown up in, eventually finding himself in the bustling city, a place alive with possibility, but also cold with indifference. Here, no one knew his name. No one cared about the seer who saw too much. Saro took up menial jobs to survive, working as a street sweeper, a dishwasher, a laborer. His days were long and exhausting, but he didn't mind. For the first time in his life, he felt free, free from the villagers' whispers, free from Neka's lies, free from the weight of his gift. He buried himself in work, his hands calloused from the labor, his mind focused on survival. But the freedom came at a cost. In the evening, after his long shifts, Saro would sit alone in his small room, exhausted but unable to sleep. His mind was a constant well of visions, a future unfolding before him. Like a tapestry he could never fully understand. The more he tried to block it out, the more it seemed to press on him. "I would never escape it," he thought, "but perhaps I can learn to live with it." With the little money he had saved, Saro began attending night classes. He took to his books with the same intensity he had once devoted to his gift, eager to understand the world in ways that had eluded him in the village. He learned about history, philosophy, and science, all the while grappling with visions that continued to invade his every waking moment. Though he was a man of few words, the knowledge he gained gave him something he had never had before, a sense of purpose. Each day in the city, as he walked out and studied, he was slowly building a new life for himself. The path was hard, and the nights were long. But with each lesson he learned, Saro grew stronger. It was during his studies that Saro began to understand his gift in a new light. He no longer viewed it as a curse, nor as something to be feared. It was a part of him, like his heartbeat or his breath. And though it had been rejected by the village, he began to see it as a tool, one that could be used to bring clarity, to help others, if only they were ready to accept it. The vision that had once tormented him now became a guide. He no longer feared the future, nor did he wish to change it. Instead, he sought to understand it. His mind, once clouded by doubt and anger, began to clear. He saw the patterns of life, the web of fate that connected all things. Still, despite his intelligence and his academic prowess, Saro's life was far from easy. His menial jobs barely paid enough for food, let alone tuition. So he took on an extra work, not just as a laborer, but as a writer for hire. He wrote assignments, research papers, and essays for other students, often under pseudonyms, earning what little money he could to survive. It was a grueling routine after a long day of working in the university library or as a janitor. Saro would stay up late at night, typing out essays, crafting perfect assignments for those who couldn't or wouldn't do the work themselves. But for Saro, it wasn't just about the money. It was survival, pure and simple. It allowed him to stay in school, to keep moving forward, despite the weight of his circumstances. He was meticulous with his work. The papers he wrote for others were always of the highest quality, reflecting his deep understanding of the subject matter and his remarkable ability to synthesize complex ideas. It wasn't just about getting paid. It was a way for Saro to sharpen his skills, to practice his intelligence in real-world applications. As his reputation in the university grew, so did the demand for his services. Saro became known as the one student who could always be counted on for a top-notch paper, the one with a mind so sharp it seemed almost otherworldly. But to most, his success was a mystery. They didn't know about his visions, his secret struggles, or the way his gift had shaped his mind. They just saw the results, perfect grades, flawless aces, and an intellect that seemed to surpass even the brightest minds in the university. In some ways, Saro had become something of a ghost. He floated through the halls of academia, his presence felt but never truly known. No one could see the true cause of his brilliance, the long hours, the sleepless nights, and constant balancing act between survival and scholarship. Saro had become accustomed to the hum of university life, to the quiet rhythm of his studies and the secret work he did for others. But one afternoon, as he sat in the library, buried in a pile of textbooks and papers, a figure approached him, a young man who had seemed out of place in the bustling campus. He was dressed simple, in worn clothes that didn't match the high-end fashion of most of the students. His eyes, though, told a different story. There was something behind them, a kind of quiet desperation, like someone searching for a lifeline in a world that seemed to have turned its back on him. The young man hesitated for a moment before speaking, his voice low and unsure. "Are you Saro, the one who helps people with their studies?" Saro looked up, his gaze meeting the stranger's, a flicker of recognition passing through him. There was something familiar about his face, though he couldn't place it. "Yes, I am," Saro replied, his voice calm but guarded. He had seen many students ask for help over the years, but something about this one felt different. "I need your help," the young man continued, his words tumbling out with a sense of urgency. "I am struggling with my studies. My father says he'll disown me if I don't get my grades up. Please, I can't afford to fail. I need to get better." Saro studied him carefully. This wasn't the first time someone had come to him with such a plea, but there was something in the man's demeanor, an age to his desperation that made Saro pause. As the young man spoke, Saro's mind began to unravel the layers of his story. There was more to this than just a simple academic struggle. Something was off, and Saro's sharp mind could sense it. He had seen many people like him, lost, struggling, hiding behind a mask. It doesn't take long for Saro's gift to whisper in his mind, revealing the hidden truth. The young man before him was not just an ordinary student. He was the governor's son, a man of wealth and power who had fallen from grace. His name was Ebuka. He went by a different name in the city, trying to blend in and escape the shadow of his past. Ebuka had been deported from the abroad after a string of drug-related offenses. His life spiraling out of control as he battled addiction and reckless behavior. His irrational attitude, fueled by drugs and the chaos he had created, had played a direct role in his mother's untimely death. Ebuka's mother, once a pillar of strength, had succumbed to the stress of dealing with her son's actions. Her health had deteriorated, and before her passing, she had begged her husband to help their son, to bring him back from the brink. But it was too late. Ebuka's behavior had already destroyed too much. Now, back in Nigeria, Ebuka was facing the consequences of his actions. His father, the powerful governor, had made it clear that he would cut him off completely if he didn't get his life together. "Take your education seriously, or you are no longer my son," the governor had warned, a threat that lingered over Ebuka's head like a dark cloud. With nowhere else to run to, Ebuka approached Saro. He had heard rumors about him, the student who could solve any problem with his mind, who seemed to have answers that no one else did. Ebuka needed help, not just with his studies, but with his life. He had lost everything, and now his father was giving him one final chance, one final shot at redemption. "I know you have a gift," Ebuka said, his voice tinged with a mix of awe and fear. "I've heard people talk about you. They say you can see the future, that you know things that others can't. I don't need you to see the future for me. I just need you to help me get better. I need to change, please. I don't know where else to run to." Saro watched him closely, the weight of his story settling in his chest. He could see the guilt and shame behind Ebuka's eyes, the pain of a young man who had lost everything and was now grasping at the last thread of hope. Saro could sense the urgency in his words, but also the desperation, the same desperation that had once driven him to seeking something better for himself. For a moment, Saro was silent. He understood the pressure that came with high expectation, the weight of a family legacy, but he also understood the darker side of the choices that led people down destructive paths. He knew Ebuka's story all too well, for in many ways it mirrored his own. Finally, Saro spoke, his voice measured but firm. "I can help you with your studies, but it won't be easy. You have to be willing to work hard, to face the consequences of your actions, and to change. It's not just about passing exams. It's about learning who you really are and what you really want to become." Ebuka nodded, his eyes burning with a new resolve. He knew that this was his last chance, and he would do whatever it took. "I'll do whatever it takes," he vowed. Ebuka threw himself into his studies with an intensity that surprised even Saro. His determination to prove himself to his father, to reclaim his dignity after everything he had lost, fueled his rapid progress. The once distracted and troubled young man was now focused, eager to learn, and making strides in his academic work. He absorbed knowledge like a sponge, his mind finally freed from the fog of drugs and self-destructive behavior. It didn't take long for his father, the governor, to notice the change. One day, after receiving an impressive report on Ebuka's newfound academic performance, the governor asked him, "What happened to you? You are different now. What changed?" Ebuka hesitated at first, but eventually he told his father everything, the pain of his past, his struggles, and most importantly, the help he had received from Saro. There's someone at the university who's helped me turn things around. His name is Saro, and he's been more than just a tutor. He has helped me change my life. The governor listened closely, intrigued by his son's transformation. Invite him here. I want to meet this man, he said, his voice firm yet curious. A few days later, Saro found himself standing before the governor's imposing estate, a far cry from the humble city apartments and university halls he was used to. Ebuka greeted him warmly and led him inside, where they were joined by the governor. The man was well dressed, his commanding presence filling the room. As Saro spoke with the governor, explaining how he had helped Ebuka regain his focus and his future, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his encounter than just gratitude. He had seen many powerful figures before, but something about the governor's eyes, the way they studied him, made him cautious. That evening, as they sat around a lavish dinner table, Saro's gift began to stir. His mind shifted, and in a flash, a vision struck him like a bolt of lightning. He saw the governor's deputy, a man who had long been in the governor's inner circle, slipping poison into the governor's drink. The plot was clear. The deputy was planning to kill the governor to seize power for himself. Saro's heart raced as he fought to remain composed. The vision was vivid, too vivid to ignore. He had to speak up. "Governor," Saro said, his voice steady but urgent, "I need to tell you something important. There is someone in your inner circle, someone you trust, who is planning to poison you. It's your deputy." The governor looked at him, surprised but skeptical. "A deputy? You are sure?" Saro nodded, his gaze unwavering. "Yes, I saw it clearly. He plans to poison you, and it will happen very soon." The governor chuckled lightly, though his expression was laced with caution. "I appreciate your concern, but you must understand, I'm not easily frightened. I'll take care of it." Even so, the warning had planted a seed of doubt. The governor's demeanor shifted, and he asked, "Can you tell me exactly how it will happen?" Saro described the vision in details, how the deputy will slip the poison into the governor's drink during the evening's meeting, how the poison would take effect slowly, and how the deputy will try to escape in the confusion. The governor listened closely, making mental notes of every word. A few days later, exactly as Saro had described, the plot unfolded. The deputy, in a moment of overconfidence, attempted to poison the governor's drink during a public event. But the governor, having been warned, was ready. His security team intercepted the deputy just before the poison could take effect, and the plot was foiled. The revelation had saved the governor's life, and he was deeply grateful to Saro for his foresight. He had seen the truth of Saro's gift. This wasn't just a man of intellect, but a man who could truly see the future, a man whose talent could save lives. In the days that followed, the governor's attitude towards Saro changed. No longer just a tutor to his son, Saro became like a son to the governor himself. The bond between them had grew stronger, and the governor offered Saro financial support, helping him get comfortable in ways he never experienced before. "You saved my life, Saro," the governor said, his voice warm. "For that, you have my deepest gratitude, but I want to do more than just thank you. You have earned a place in this family. Anything you need is yours." With the governor's help, Saro found a level of financial security he never imagined. For the first time in his life, he could focus on his studies without the constant worry of survival. As Saro's success in the city grew, so did his sense of independence. He knew that the life he had built was now his own, shaped by his intellect, his visions, and the unexpected kindness of the governor. Saro had come a long way since his days of struggling in the city. With the governor's support and the wealth he had now attained, he was financially able to live a comfortable life, a life he had dreamed of when he was just a child. bullied and abandoned by his village. When his father, who had once been a pillar of strength in his life, came to visit, Saro felt an overwhelming sense of joy. The man who had always believed in him was now coming to share in his success. But when Saro invited his father to join him in the city, the response was not what he expected. His father, who had grown old in the village, made a request that Saro hadn't anticipated. "I want your mother and your brother to join us too," he said. Saro's heart sank. He had tried to forget the painful memories of his stepmother, Neka, and the most torment she had caused him. He had hoped that her wicked ways would remain behind in the village, but his father insisted. "He has changed, Saro. She is not the woman she used to be, I promise you." Reluctantly, Saro agreed, and they brought in Neka and his stepbrother to the city. Upon their arrival, they were amazed at the comfortable life Saro had built for himself. The mansion he now lived in was a far cry from the cramped spaces of the village. The luxury and security were undeniable, and for a moment, Saro thought that maybe his father was right, that perhaps Neka had truly changed. But Neka's jealousy festered like a poison in the dark corners of her heart. The woman who had once tormented Saro, who had driven him from the village, now found herself in the shadow of his success. She watched as her stepson flourished in ways she could never have imagined. Neka, once the village sole caterer, its cook and provider, was now in the position of preparing meals for Saro's new life. Yet, despite the comfort, she could not contain the jealousy that simmered within her. The wealth, the respect, the attention Saro had earned, it was all too much for her to bear. As the weeks passed, Neka's bitterness only grew. She resented Saro's rise, his connection with the governor, and the way he had earned the affection of his father. One evening, as she prepared dinner for the family, she saw an opportunity. A poison she had kept hidden in her bag, a toxic concussion that would slowly take its toll, became her weapon. With a cruel smile hidden behind the facade of a loving mother, Neka poisoned Saro's meal. She stirred into the sauce, carefully to ensure he would eat it first. She wanted him to suffer, to feel the sting of her envy, her thirst for revenge. The poison took effect quickly at first. Saro felt nothing, but within minutes, a strange dizziness overtook him. His vision blurred, his heart raced, and his mind began to fragment. It wasn't just a physical pain, it was something worse. Something in his mind snapped, and the world around him grew distorted. Saro, the gifted seer, the man who had seen the future, now found himself trapped in a nightmare of his own creation. The vision, once clear and sharp, now came in wild flashes, disconnected and incoherent. He couldn't make sense of them, couldn't control them. The once powerful gift that had guided him through life now turned on him, tearing his sanity apart. In a matter of hours, Saro was no longer the man he had been. The poison had twisted his mind, driving him into the edge of madness. He raved. He muttered strange prophecies and saw visions that made no sense, terrifying, chaotic glimpses of a future he could not grasp. His father, horrified by the transformation, rushed to his side, but it was too late. Saro was beyond help, his mind lost in a storm of madness, and in that moment, the true depth of Neka's cruelty was revealed. She had poisoned the one person who had once been a source of hope and strength, not out of necessity, but out of pure jealousy and hatred.